follow up on our interviews. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to discuss our applicants for town administrator and maybe come up with a possible timeline and whatever the board, whatever else the board wants to do. So I don't know how you gentlemen would like to start this, or...
Well, I would start with a question. Is part of our discussion, I would assume, is going to be about the material inside their confidential resumes? Is that something that's supposed to be public knowledge, or is that something we're supposed to keep in confidence? And if that is, we need to discuss this.
And what, you mean in there?
If the content in their
Depends on the
resume is
content.
meant to be confidential and remain confidential, is it
The
something we
resume
need
is
to?
public information.
That, yeah, that's public.
That's all,
the
that's my only
application,
concern. is
Yeah,
if
that's
if
public
that's-
at this
And
point.
one was and one
Yeah.
wasn't.
Then
or
that's
something.
my only concern.
Yeah, the interviews were public, everything is public, they have them, and, yeah, all that
The
is.
resume had to be confidential, I was gonna say we
Yeah,
have to do.
I think there are-
Otherwise,
It is up to a point as to what they're doing, but I think we've gone
excellent.
beyond that point. And what part is confidential is, you know, if we decide on a candidate, the negotiation and stuff until it's actually completed, and if the deal is consummated, then everything becomes public at that point. So that's where we're at this point. And we had 3 interviews from 3, I thought, very good candidates. And I don't know how the board would like to proceed.
Charlie, I had a suggestion.
Okay.
I suggested that each member of the board rank the candidates 1, 2, and 3, 1 being the top choice.
Mhm.
And then you discuss them at that point, but that's just a suggestion.
Okay, we can do it that way.
Okay, as I was suggesting before, I'd like us to all put 2 pros and 2 cons for each candidate. That'll give us theoretically up to 6. Positive, could only be 2. We could
Yeah.
call the same 2 strengths, but 2 to 6 strengths for each
Yep,
candidate.
we can do that, or we
And
can,
2 to 6 weaknesses for each candidate, so we can,
Yep.
to get those on the board to start with. If you want to rank them for us, for ourselves, that would be fine
Yeah.
with me. And then I'd like to see pros and cons, which I've already listed mine out. That would
Mhm.
give us something to start discussing. We could go one candidate
Okay.
at a time and discuss the pros and cons of each individual candidate. We can just go in the order we interviewed them if you want to keep it simple.
Yep.
And then, I don't know if at that point we want to see where we stand, or if we'd want to start comparing one to the other
Mhm.
for fit, but I'm not against ranking them personally.
Okay. And the other option is, we don't have, I don't think we're gonna do this, at least I hope. We don't have to accept any of them. That's another option, but I don't feel that that probably will happen, but anyway, that's an option, so. However you,
I
gentlemen.
like the idea of just, before we get into ranking them, is we just choose one and all 3 of us just start talking about it. Throw something on the table, discuss, get back and forth. Do that through each one, and then we can come back and just say, this is how I would rank them, because getting a little of your input might help me in my ranking. So I'd rather do a little discussion before I throw a rank out.
Yeah, I don't want to show, I'm going to rank mine now, and I'll rank them again after our discussion, not for you guys. I'm gonna
Well, I
rank
mean, that's
them
up to, yeah.
And then rank them again after our discussion.
So,
You know, and see whether a discussion changes in my mind, if anything, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because I'm curious to see what you all have for perspective as compared to mine.
if you want, I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
We'll just, maybe we just start with Andrew with the first interviewee, and then go through it. And then Mike, then Candace, just as we kind of interviewed, however we want. My initial impression of Andrew is he's got a drive. He's a go-getter. If you say, this is something I'm looking for, he's gonna dig under every little rock in the yard and find you what you're looking for. I think he has I would almost call it like the jack of all trades type of knowledge and experience. I haven't quite got there to be an expert in anything yet, but I'm really familiar with how general municipal government works because of being the assistant, but he doesn't own one department over another. Obviously, he's lacking in supervision or any direct supervision over someone, so that experience is something that it didn't appear he could show right now. And probably he would have to develop if that was something, a person we would go with. But I do think, conveniently or not, with our current situation with our own IT director and his experience and understanding of IT, doesn't mean he knows but he understands the network, he understands the security side, he understands the infrastructure and the software side well enough so that it's kind of, you need to know it enough just so that someone doesn't talk you in circles when you're trying to figure out what somebody's presenting to you. And I think he understands that well enough to also know when to go research more to clarify some questions that might be nice for us moving into that next step that we might be stepping into.
Did you list specifically pros and cons, or no? Yeah.
No, this is my experience. I have notes throughout.
I was
I'm
wondering
just
if you guys like
speaking
that
general
idea.
comments,
Yes.
my impression.
However you want it.
You can write whatever you want on that. It was just a general
I was hoping we'd all
comment.
list some pros and cons, just to do critical thinking of, just pick your top 2 positive aspects of them for me, and your top 2 negatives that you'd see. That way we're trying to think
Okay.
of, like, it's like when you.
I mean, the negative is the lack of experience in the top supervisory position. I believe
Okay.
that's the biggest negative I see. I think the biggest positive is as his role. One, the procurement experience, the personnel experience. He's got experience in a town administrator's
General
office.
experience in the position.
So it doesn't mean, again, the decision maker versus I've observed, I've watched, I've paid attention. He's also familiar with the concept and the understanding that, lightly touched on when it came to just facilities. I think when it comes to us trying to find out-of-the-box thinking, I could see him being a good out-of-the-box thinker, like, how's another way to fund this, how's another way to do that? He'll go look for answers. If he can't find an answer, he's not gonna accept
Critical
nothing.
thinking.
Yeah, so those are the kind of the positives. So the critical thinking and the
The
general knowledge of the
experience
position. I don't wanna say the experience, but the knowledge. He comes to the table understanding roles and responsibilities of the various departments
Okay.
in a municipality.
And a lack of supervision experience would be a detraction, and what else could you think of? Sometimes it's hard to come up with a negative, but.
It could be partly with that lack of experience or supervision, could also be potentially a lack of confidence. So when you're sitting in a situation where you've got to present yourself as the final decision maker, can you do it? Or is it going to be hard for you to say, nope, the decision's made, we got to move forward with this?
Okay,
Rather than get too much in, you've got to be a team builder, there's a balance, but you've also got to be able to just make the decision. And I think maybe that lack of confidence, due to the lack of supervision, maybe
fair enough.
that's, I guess, how I would put it.
My pros for him,
Hold on 1 second.
sorry. I put thought into these already to try to bring it in, because
You're doing your pros or cons? I'm sorry.
yeah, my pros for him
Okay.
were that he's fully involved in this position. It's similar to what you said. He's got general knowledge of all these working departments and their interactions and the budget itself, developing future plans, ideas on how to bring more foot traffic into town and more business, and all the things we're looking to do, he touched upon, and showed a great knowledge of full aspects of the position, as you said. Maybe not experience in it, but good knowledge of all that, which, quite frankly, I certainly didn't have before I sat in this chair. So that was good. And my second was specifically the IT. To me, that was a huge plus, not because I'd expect him to be our new IT guy, But to have someone in the office that understands that, whatever happens for a search for another IT professional, I think he's gonna be crucial in vetting somebody out, because he's gonna understand better than we do what's involved. I mean, it sounds basically like, well, we just had Adam do here, he did in Palmer, and I think that's a huge plus for us right now, given the fact that when we talked to Adam last, he said when he gets so far along on a project, then he'd be called off, to change a toner, or to plug something in, or to run somebody through rebooting their computer again. And he was looking forward to an intern to pick up the slack on these things that he shouldn't have to pick up on. Well, that's something that someone that's an administrator that understands the IT could be a buffer and stop that before it gets to our IT guy. So I see it's sort of like takes the need for the intern away and some of the easier stuff, and would help us. So big pro to me. The cons, I said that he's young in his experience in the position. Similar to you're saying, he doesn't have a lot of experience in the position. Conversely, when you talk about Mr. Garside having run a military base, he's got tremendous experience in leading and being over large groups of people. He doesn't have that, so that is a detraction. And I said also, he came across as a little timid. Not necessarily a con, but it's a caution to me. I think when someone's coming for a job interview, overly cocky is not preferred, and overly casual or overly rigid and unapproachable, not friendly. So he seemed confident enough, but some of the people that they met in the department heads said he seemed a little timid, and that could be because he's trying to be respectful. There's a lot of ways to read into it, but that is a fact. That same thing you said is just a little.
And exactly, it's
Little-
a perception, but it may not be the confidence versus just how he presents himself.
Right. But
Okay.
that was my pros and cons for him. This will give us something to critically think about, though.
Yeah.
I learned a long time ago in a college writing course. It's one thing to put your own ideas, what you think on paper, and later have oral arguments in class and argue what you believe in your paper. And this one course, they actually broke the class into two every time, because there's black and white in every one of these issues being debated, and you had to argue the other side. So you'd write your paper, but you had to learn enough about the opposition's point of view and learn enough about what you'd see as negative on that to argue on behalf of that side. That's why I think listing pros and cons, no matter who we like or favor, to list good and bad is important, to understand that there's things that are drawbacks.
Yeah,
That's why I want to see both.
yeah. That's a good point. That's actually how I prepare for tough meetings. But anyway, that's my thing. I guess I shared Richard's views on it. I thought the IT thing is important to me. And I think there's another aspect to him in this position that I think it probably sways me more. It's an intangible, you can't quantify it, but the demographics, yeah, Palmer's a bigger town, larger community, but the demographics are very, very close to the same, income levels, everything else. I couldn't help but get the feeling that once he got established, he would fit in Barry. His personality, his background, just you could see it. I mean, and I think he was a little, reluctant on some answers, and maybe that's competence or something. But I couldn't help but notice that. You sat there and you felt, he, could be the quintessential, as I call us, the quintessential townies. But he fit that mold, and I think he could, once he got going, he could really relate well to our citizens and get along with them. Now, the other side of that is the experience level to some degree, and I see it as a confidence thing. And whoever we put in this position, they're gonna get tested immediately by people, department head, people work, citizens. They're just gonna try and put it right to him, and we're gonna have, I think it would take more backing from, in terms of giving him the confidence booster or the support. This board's gonna have to do more of that with him than the others. I mean, and
Yeah.
maybe,
Agreed.
yeah, just because of the experience, he might be a little,
And I'd say possibly would have to do more with him. Don't know.
don't, no, I can't say that.
Certainly because he's younger as well, but since we have a young police chief and we have a young DPW superintendent, I think, yeah, that was one of my concerns. Someone of greater years and experience and just senior in
Yeah.
stature. We've been taught to respect our elders as we go on, and somebody with a few more years on them literally may give people a little pause before challenging them. So he could be up against that, but since we have some young staff, he may not, but it's
Yeah,
certainly.
or the response, or his response to
I
it.
see where that's coming from, absolutely.
Yeah, that's just my thought. I did see that, I guess you might say it's a drawback, but everyone in this room has been in that position at some point in your life, so, making decisions and moving on in different positions. But I did see that as, I don't think it's an insurmountable problem, but I thought his overall personality would fit into the town. I like the fact that he stated that, he wanted to be involved in some of our civic groups and that sort of thing. I mean, the others kind of said that, but I like that. There was one answer, and I will tell you that it made me perk my ears up, and having served on this and other boards, as you gentlemen and everyone in this room had, when he said, "I will do whatever the board is want. After all, your primary mission is to stay in office," and I don't see that as, our primary mission is to do what we feel is best for the town of Barry and its citizens.
But I understand, I was,
I
he's
understood
sort of,
what-
you stay in office by making people happy and doing what the town wants, and that's.
Yeah, I understood, but
The way he phrased it, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the best of phrasing, but I did remember
That
that.
goes back to his youth, I don't think it came really,
Yeah.
I understood what he meant by what he said, but yeah,
I did too,
I think
but I
it came
didn't.
out completely wrong.
I had to say, well, I think most of us are in these positions to help our community, and, I've rarely seen anything other than people that wanted to do what they thought was best. I may not have agreed with them, but I think most people are motivated for the right reasons, so. But that was just one little thing, so, but, I don't know if you want to move on to the,
Unless. you
Yeah, I
wanna-
think we're good to
I'd
go to the next one.
I'd like
and-
to do all these and then get into more discussion
Okay.
about it, each one.
Right, I thought that was a good way of just,
Yeah,
okay,
I
that's
like-
on the
I like
table,
that.
let's go to the
That's
next.
what I was
And
hoping to do.
okay.
will you start with this, Greg?
Sure. Okay, so next we had Matthew Garside. Let's keep my notes going here. Pros, one thing I already touched on. A big pro is he's done large-scale administration experience, both to run a military base and that's effectively being mayor of a small town. In the oil industry, it sounded like he ran some pretty big companies, and he's got a good bit of large-scale administration experience. And he also comes across as very authoritative. When I looked at his resume initially, I was very concerned that part of his resume talked about downsizing, cutting personnel without hurting the customers. Really sounded like he was a hardcore cut people. Not at all when you meet him. Not at all what we got in the interview. I was very pleasantly surprised in his interview. He certainly commands the respect with his demeanor and his posture. Softly spoken, thoughtfully spoken, mindful of remembering people's names, cordial. But everything about that brings respect and authority, and I really, that struck a strong note with me. So, administrative experience and authoritative. And my cons, no real municipal experience. Just as he's saying how good Andrew fit for the familiarity with the comparable, town to this, similar structures and peoples, A military base is a completely different set of personnel. If you've been in the military, I have, it's a whole different way of life. We have military sites we talk to one another on. We have discussions, and I even had one in the fire department with one of the guys. He was talking about a friend of his from the military. Oh, he's getting himself in trouble. He's been getting a drug and got arrested. And one of the other firemen piped up, but he's a good guy, right? And we both looked at him, are you stupid? No, no, he's not. But because he's a veteran, someone else automatically wants to say, he's a nice guy. No, he's not a nice guy. He's a piece of garbage. It's just an old friend of his has gone astray. But there's different attitudes and mindsets in the military. So the people you have on that base are different than your average citizenry. The administrations you deal with function in different ways, and the order and structure is very rigid. So the lack of experience with the municipality does give me some hesitation. Just as Charlie was saying how great it was to see how well Andrew fit with that familiarity, and literally like a piece of the puzzle. He's a different piece. It's a different puzzle, and I don't know how well that would work here. I mean, clearly it worked in the military and clearly it worked in an oil industry. It doesn't mean it works in a small town. My second concern was career orientation. Both of our other candidates, both of them, this is already their career path. They've gone to school specifically for this. They've mastered in this. They work in the field. They're assistants trying to step up to the head position. This is their career path, and they're pursuing a career. He seems to have had the major career of his life, and he's looking for something to do to continue on and keep working. I believe he said, to paraphrase, there's no money in the oil industry right now, so I thought I'd do something different. Sort of like a whim, I'll give this a shot. And I don't want to be doing this again in 2 years or 4 years. I'm hoping that one of these other two, they both say they want to stay and they're looking for long term, and I believe that. And I don't believe we have that in him, and that also gave me some concern. As much as I like his demeanor and his authority and his very thoughtful answers on personnel issues and dealing with people, that's exactly what I've talked about here, is I don't want people to have the feeling like the selectmen ask them a question, we're out to fire them, we're out for their job. No, we're out to make their job work better and make things, find out what's going on. And he covered that very eloquently in how he spoke. So I'm not trying to detract for the other things, but there's certainly concern for longevity of how long he really wants to be here. When he really, as you may recall, when I interviewed for the position that Phil now holds, I said, hey, I don't know if I want to do this.
Right.
I don't know if I can sit behind a desk, but what better way to do it than when it's interim? Because I've worked all my life with my hands and been outdoors and on job sites and moved around, and I don't know if I could do this. And that's the same thought it brought to me for him. Those are mine.
Okay, good. I think that,
What's your thoughts?
what?
What's your thoughts on him?
Well, I think he certainly could do the job, but I think that the structure and the management structure and stuff that he's accustomed to, I think provides I think we're in the public sector, well, not that he is, but he isn't, but we're also in a political context, and there has to be this give and take and the willingness to compromise at times and that sort of thing. And it seems to be a certain rigidity here that I'm not sure he would step up to that sort of thing that quickly. And it just seems to be a little too rigid for what we have going on in Barry and stuff. Could he do the job? I'm absolutely certain he could do the job.
I believe any of the.
I think all three of these could do the job. But, I just think that there's a certain, seems like a very structured, rigid, and you gotta have a little give and take in this position, or else you're gonna go crazy, I think. But, that's just my opinion, and that's the way it struck me, is that, it's a very straight down, you go down the list, boom, 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 and
Right.
at least that's the way he struck me. I don't know, I'm sure he can do it, there's no question about that.
Fair enough, we're looking for opinions here, so.
What?
Fair enough, we're looking for opinions here.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
That's what I want to hear.
Yep.
One thing that I thought I got out of the interview mostly was that he referenced several times just the word relationships. Whether it was his relationships with his subordinates, his relationships with a board that he answered to, his relationships with kind of local government agencies in the Singapore area that he was at, and how he had to work with the locals in there. And that's where, also when he was talking about the discipline action where he had to let someone go, he built the concept of, he kind of referred to a relationship again in that where usually when you're letting someone go, it's not because they're a bad person. You know, so you're not trying, it's not I don't like the person, it's they have failed to do their job. And he said it's really key to know that you've got to make sure they know their job before you let them go. So if they're not doing something, you got to take the time to explain to them what they need to do and give them a chance to correct themselves. And the standard step process of going from, you can call it the verbal, written, you're fired, or you could call it just good practice of, I'm not going to hold you accountable for something you don't know, but I will if you fail to catch up when we teach you. And I thought that was a strong point where it wasn't, the way he prefaced that made me think he understands a little bit of still a structure in that format, but not necessarily a hard line. It seemed to imply that he understood the subjectivity of certain issues. It's not all just boom, 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 you're gone. So I thought the concept of building relationships, whether it's working with our neighboring towns, working with the different boards, working with, was a real key. So I thought that was something where his continued reference to that said, okay, you understand kind of just general networking, you know, building relationships. We don't get anywhere on our own, so we got to bring people together to get there. I do think that the first thought, I think, in his mind, comparing this job to his previous experience, was this was much smaller and less complicated. But I think when he gets here, he'll realize it's the same thing at a different, you've got just as many people you got to deal with and just as different many boards and things that you've got to work with rather than just expect to do as you ask them to do.
Right.
And so he still agrees with the relationship part, but I do think, like you guys were referencing with the structure, there's certain relationships where when they're below you, the relationship is, you'll do what I ask, right? And you get the feedback. You don't just say, do what I say, and then they say, well, it's going to hurt you if we do. You know, this, you know, it's not a good plan of action. I don't think he's the type that's just going to walk over good advice.
Even in the military, when you have subordinates, yes, you can tell them absolutely, here's what you're going to do. There are leaders who are liked and leaders who are not liked. You know, there was a full-bird colonel out there shoveling snow with people during the snowstorm when the T shut down, shoveling with them.
Yeah.
Not, you guys go shovel snow and I'll sit here and watch you. There's a difference. So I
Right.
get the impression he's more of that grab a shovel and pitch in guy. But yeah, that's
Right. So I see. I guess my
But the military,
my
yes.
compliment
Like
is
it or
also
not,
my
they're gonna have
derogatory.
to-
Not my derogatory, but my positive is also my negative. Where I think the positive is he builds relationships, and works with people. But my negative is I think the certain expectation of how you work with them is maybe, well, if I present a good argument, you'll just follow along. And maybe I'm wrong.
We don't know.
I've talked to him for about an hour. So this is just an opinion, totally an opinion. But I did like the way he represented himself about relationships. And I do think all the other experience on the resume says he could figure out how to do this job pretty quickly. You know, I don't think there's a challenge that this town can present that he can't do, but I did think he maybe underestimated what we're asking of him to a little bit of a degree. But I don't think that necessarily changed his mind. I mean, he would have said, never mind, I don't want the job. I felt a little bit of a, I don't know how else to put it.
Okay.
So what were your cons?
Well, I was repeating pretty much cons they had mentioned in a different way, kind of the different in the management structure. And I felt like his expectation of the job wasn't necessarily the same thing we might have been asking during the interview.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You want that?
Yes.
Okay, I guess we can start. The one Candace, who we interviewed the other night. Who wants that?
Your turn this time.
Okay, I can.
We'll just go right through the way we did, right?
Yep, go. Okay, I can. Well, I thought, in terms of the overall interview and what we're looking for, she was probably the best of the three and had a very good idea. Now, there could be a variety of reasons for that, and I'll leave that one on the table, like that comment go where it goes, I guess. But I think she, probably has overall for the position, maybe the best preparation for the position. Has a little less in town government experience, not that long, from, I guess, 2012 to the present. She's in a town that's not really that similar to Barry in some respects. I don't think that would be a problem, but that is a difference. I think a plus in having worked in the field, I think I saw where she was the chief of staff for one of the legislators and worked in state senate office. And, pretty much in that environment. It's a very public relations oriented environment, and you still have to convey that certain things have to go certain ways at times, and to survive that length of time, it's a tough job. But she has that and should have skills, maybe I'm going on too long, that could benefit the town in terms of dealing with the media, being media, that type of thing, because that's one of the things you have to do. And that's a pretty important part of our job, of what this board does. I think probably on some of those issues, she's very, very well prepared. I think it's fine to say you're a workaholic, but I think there's a certain intensity there that at times you gotta have a little give and take, and I have to wonder at times, that part was really concerned that you gotta have a pace or you're just gonna really burn out in a job like this. And, I'm not sure if that's a major detraction, but I think at the same time, she seemed very, at times, a little inflexible on certain issues if you talk to her. But I think, but I'd have to say, in overall preparation for the position, she seems very confident. I think she strikes me as the type of person that could pretty easily stand her ground. At least that's the way it looked to me. But with that said, I'll turn it over to whoever wants to.
Okay. I felt that she came off let's put it this way. I liked what I heard. my concern, and I'll put it on the table.
Boy, you've been real delicate with this, it must be.
Well, it's just the truth, and it's hard to present it because it just is, as people
Just
have
stick with
probably
pros.
gotten to know me, I'm a little skeptical
Look at
sometimes.
Straight pros and cons, a couple
Is-
good points, a couple negative points, that's all.
Her interview followed previous interviews that were already televised. So I don't know how well that affected her ability to provide answers and how she read us in our response to the answers we had gotten the night before, the previous. Because the answers were very on point to some of the way the questions and the follow-up questions were presented. And this is not a negative against her. It could be a very great talent to be able to do that. So I'm not knocking it necessarily. I'm just telling you that when I start to present things that I liked that she said, there's an underlying caveat right now that,
Questions 3, 8, 9, and 11, she answered verbatim with phrases that our other candidates used.
so you saw it too.
Oh, yes.
But that's
Yeah.
okay.
I was
And I
voting
kind
during the
of, I
interview. It was
hinted
very-
at it if I said the preparation for one reason. or
Well,
another.
I know, and what it really tells me is, this, again, it doesn't necessarily mean anything she said was wrong, incorrect, or not something she believed in, okay? It doesn't mean that. But it does make me think, and I'd rather not get too deep into this yet. We'll stick with the
Right.
pros and cons, and then we can come back
Agreed.
to this.
Agreed.
But as a pro, it does mean with not a lot of influence. I mean, it was only 2 interviews of the amount of influence from us. She did a good job reading what people want, if that's what she did. So she can see, in other words, she can see what's out there. Now, how she reacts and responds to it, and is it effective, and how long is it effective is a different question. I think she's got a skill set in recognizing what people want, which is important. The way she presented herself as, I'll give you both sides of the story, I'll tell you exactly what I think, but in the end, I'll act according to the board, I liked. But what we didn't really get into in the nuts and bolts of that is, that works when we're talking to you. And it's a subject matter you believe we want to know about. But if you don't believe we want to know about it, or you're not sure, that's an undefined line that just takes time to learn. That's it. You just can't expect someone to know an expectation of the board and vice versa. And at what level is this just ordinary day-to-day stuff that they're just doing, and at what level is, you should bring this to the board. And sometimes having a strong opinion of this is where we need to go may blind you to, does the board want to know differently?
So it's
So that would be a
concern
negative.
whether or not we get full disclosure sometimes.
Potentially.
Okay.
Because I kind of agree with Charlie. She can have a strong opinion and be confident in it. Not necessarily trying to undermine anybody, just confident in it and acting on it, and then come to tell you, this is why I acted on it the way I did. But at that point, the action is done. Not. So sometimes that kind of mentality can get you ahead of yourself, as I perceive a town administrator's role. That's my opinion. I'll leave it at that. I know that's various opinions on what that is, and that's okay. I definitely think, again, she would try to work with a lot of people and just work well with people. I don't know if there's a difficult situation going on, or a difficult relationship or something like that, I'm not sure she has the tools to address it. She had mentioned that as one of her weaknesses, I believe, which is okay. She doesn't like the confrontation. It's not her preference to deal with disciplinary actions, or if something's not going right, sometimes you just have to face it. and make an agreed, this is how you don't necessarily have to, again, we went through this many times, you don't always have to agree to still be able to create a professional relationship where if I ask a question, you'll answer it, and if you ask a question, I'll answer it, and we can keep moving forward. I don't know if things start getting rocky and someone doesn't like her way of doing business, will she be able to keep working? And not necessarily saying she would stop talking, but if she needs someone to continue to talk with her, would she be able to find a way to rebuild?
I understand that.
And that's what I meant.
Charlie and I had a heated debate about
I don't know if it's
whether,
heated,
whether
but-
or not to put a warrant on for an override. And I enjoy that opposition where you get to express your point of view, get into it thoroughly, hear the other person's point of view. And I fully understand why he said not to. And I'm not saying it's a wrong point of view.
Right.
Mine was a roll of the dice, and I understand that. But I
Yep.
wanted to make sure you guys understood it. And I
Mhm.
think he listened to me, and I listened to him, and that's a good debate. And you don't walk away scared saying, "Well, he doesn't like my opinion." So,
No.
you know, you gotta have that. And yeah, I understand if you're
Yeah, that's the way I look
concerned
at it.
that-
It's an opinion.
Right.
You state your views
And you can't, all these people on Facebook disowning people over the last election because they voted for someone they didn't, I'm like, come on. That's the whole idea of a vote.
Yeah.
It's done, move on. But yeah, some people can't, and we don't know.
And I can understand why, that could also be as much of a strength, where you don't get caught up in drama. You almost ignore it and you just keep going forward, and so you only make it a point when you have to make it a point, and you address it and you keep moving on. So it may be, again, too much of a snapshot view of what I heard versus what reality would prove out. So I do believe one of those strengths, though, does develop trying to build a relationship and work with everybody that you have to work with, whether it's towns, boards, department heads. So that is a strength. I think she has the ability to probably work with people. You know, at least communicate generally. I think she wants to work with people. I don't know how well she does when they all of a sudden don't want to work with her. That was the negative side, but I think she has the ability to try to sit at the table and work with anybody and she kind of presented herself as someone that wants to work as a team, work in a direction.
Very much
I
a
love the
people
way she presented herself with the concept of economic development, town planning. I do believe that's really important for the town at this moment, because I think it's the best way for us to start trying to correct our budget issues, is we gotta find revenues. And we can't find revenues if we can't find a way to increase the market values of our properties. And that's pretty much it. So if you've got empty commercial properties, they're not assessed at a very high level. You put a business in there, the assessment goes up, we get more without raising the tax rate.
And I think we actually heard that from Andrew first, when he talked about bringing new business in and developing the community. That's key, one of those things that when it came from her, struck me as we just heard that answer.
But still,
Yeah, doesn't mean.
doesn't mean it's not the right
If you're
way she
wise
feels
enough,
either.
if you're wise enough to watch your first two interviews, which you'd be foolish not to if you could, then you should absolutely try to draw from the things you felt are the right answers, or the things that we seem to indicate were the right answers. And it seemed that was done to me. Whether someone else watched and gave her some advice, or she did, it definitely seemed to me that she had the benefit of looking at those things. And I see nothing wrong with that. And I see nothing wrong with she stood here and said, well, I watched those other two guys, and boy, they had some good answers. And I think this could be a little different.
Yeah.
But when we got to her last question, and she said, well, I could have no idea what the other two people are all about, I went, wow, that's not what I expected from listening to your answers. I expected, well, since I had the benefit of watching the other two, I can tell you what's better. That's what I expected. And I got that answer. I said, what?
Yeah.
You're telling me you didn't listen to them? I found it unbelievable after listening to her answers that she didn't have.
And again,
But, once again, there's nothing wrong with listening to him, and maybe she was concerned that could have been held against her, but I would have expected if someone had the chance, you'd take every opportunity to
Yeah.
do better than.
Or she could have just watched meetings and just.
Yeah,
You know.
it was, I don't know, can't know.
Yeah.
But that had nothing to do with my pros and cons with her anyways, I left it out of it because I can't know, but.
Okay.
One of the things also that I thought I heard from her that I hadn't heard from the other two candidates, and I don't think it was necessarily something you could easily derive from previous interviews, was one, from where, and she seemed to like the town of Barry. She seemed to like some of her previous experiences in the town of Barry. I don't know how extensive that is, but it does matter to me that someone comes in and says, and I care about this town. Now, again, a snapshot interview is very difficult
It
to get
is.
to know somebody. So I'm not,
It is.
and as I said, a lot of my thoughts come off very skeptical. I understand that, and it's not necessarily just her. You know, all three of them presented themselves in a certain manner, but I don't know if I ever saw them again if I'd see the same manner. Because people aren't the
you're
same
into
in an interview as they
You're
are
putting
when
your
they
best
live.
foot forward, I
They
hope.
try their best, but it just, exactly. So that was kind of my thoughts on the pros and the cons. I think she likes the idea of getting along with everybody, but when it comes down to having to say, nope, this isn't right, she may have a difficult time making that change and getting things to go in the right direction. Whether it's a personnel issue, that's more where I'm not so sure she would be strong on addressing a personnel issue.
Well, it's easy for me to go last in pros and cons because we've covered all the stuff. My pros are straightforward. She's the most qualified on paper. I mean, one candidate, Andrew, was regional planning bachelor's, public administration master's. Matthew was maritime transportation, then a fellowship, but then a master's in public administration. They all have masters in public administration, but she had liberal arts, a minor and a major before that, before the masters. And her job experience and the things she's done on paper, far stronger. So that was a big pro for her. Even just coming into the interviews, looking at those resumes, this really stood out, But once again, the concern for Matthew before the interview was the notes that he's, cut workforce sizes down without it, and I was worried about that. But that was dispelled when he got to the interview. So the resumes don't always speak the truth, but
No.
that was, I think, the strongest, I thought, resume. And the other pro is her diverse experience, including the governmental experience. Having some knowledge, as Charlie knows, having some knowledge of how the state government's working at that level really might change his perspective on things that you do in the town. We can't know, but people who've worked there can know what their process is, what their mindset is, how they make their decision. And that may change how a town presents something to them. And there's a benefit to that knowledge to the town that you can't really quantify until something comes up that you need done through the state and it can get through. We have had the benefit of having, Steve Brewer in town and Ann Goby around all the time, so we have the ear of people that have worked very diligently in the past for this town. And we know the benefit of that. So I saw that as a definite pro. Her cons. She did not strike me as authoritative. She struck me as people-friendly, very much concerned with the relationships. It's similar to how Mr. Garside wants to form relationships. But he talked about relationships and working relationships and how that interaction will function and how it fits together in the puzzle. And she seemed more of just wanting to make relationships with everybody, not necessarily how they interact and what they mean towards the business of the town, but to just have good relationships with everybody. And I didn't see an ability, I think as you touched upon, to separate the friendship and the relationship from the business where it need be. As an administrator, there are times where you have to be rigid and you have to, hey, I like you, we're good friends, but, you know, this is the rules. You're stepping outside the box here, we need you to try to conform with everyone else is doing, you know, maybe we can find another way to get this done and to get you back to where we need you to be, but this behavior we can't have, you know. If it's your friend, you don't wanna do that, and maybe if they resist it, you're not gonna push it. So that's a concern. And the second one was my question, I asked point blank, there's literally no IT knowledge. I didn't ask that of Mr. Garside, but I'm familiar with the military. Everything's done through the computers and computer systems, and I know there's at least some relevant working knowledge of that because of those jobs that he's done, I know that. And we know that Andrew had done that because it's part of his resume, so I asked her about hers, and blankly, none.
Yep.
I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all, so those would be my negatives.
Okay. Bill, did you have any thoughts for us?
I do. We don't know whether she was listening to the other interviews.
Right.
We do not.
I thought she came out very well when we had the one-on-ones with the department heads. And those were, as far as I know, she didn't know the questions in advance. Yes, I think she works very well with people. I think she would be authoritative. She was my top choice. I think she beat the others hands down. She had the desire to work in the town. She knows about the town already. She has all this experience. She could just hit the job running, and I think we need that. This is a tough job. It's been a challenging 6 months for me.
Yeah. I'm sure.
And I believe Mr. Garside would take a while to sort of come up to speed. I think that Andrew is too timid. I think he needs somebody with backbone in this position. I'm not sure he has that. As far as IT, we hopefully will get someone on board to do that. So I don't know that you really need to have that in your town administrator. Would be helpful, but I don't think it's a prerequisite. She just impressed me as the best candidate all the way around.
Okay. Okay. Ray, did you have any?
No, I shared a lot of the same pros and cons. Actually, Charlie and I met today, and he asked me, and I did pros and cons as well.
It's a good way to look at it, I think, and
I think so. It kind of lets you look at the candidate in both ways.
Objectively.
You know? Yeah. I would say, to start, the first one was Andrew. I felt that Andrew knew a lot of policy, regulation. I felt that that would be a strength where he may be timid, like you said, but I thought possibly in my mind that his knowledge of policy would trump the need to be more, we'll say rugged, so to speak. I
Just
thought
to
maybe he
interrupt,
would be able to.
the Trump word is not a good word
Yeah.
to use these days.
I thought he may be able to if he
No,
had a
it's okay. He
situation.
wanted
It's okay.
Here's the rank.
Oh, yeah, he won everywhere. I'm not saying
But
it's,
in our
I'm
town,
not
he
saying it's a bad.
Go ahead,
word,
sorry,
but
Faye.
That's
I had to
I
bring it-
agree, that's.
I just felt that he
was
would be able
I
to
forgot
say,
about
this
that.
is the policy and this is where it stands. And that's, I
He
like that.
did seem familiar quoting state regulations and things, which you
Yeah,
pulled out
and
a couple of chapters and then you talked about,
Yeah.
which was,
I think the second
difficult
bonus for
to
me,
talk on.
for him, which I don't think I told you, Charlie, was the procurement part. We do a lot with procurement, and that's important to make sure that we procure whatever it is in town correctly. So I thought that was it. For him, my con with him was like his timidness, but it wasn't so much that I ruled him out. With Matt, I felt that Matt brought a lot to the table, and I could see that his
You mean Mike,
experience.
right?
Who?
Mike, the
Matt.
newbie guy.
Matthew?
Matthew. Garza.
Matthew?
Yep.
This one.
She's got it right.
Thank you,
Um,
Faye. I apologize. Thanks for correcting.
So I think he brought
And
from
he's
the
good on,
military.
he's good on names.
He is very good at names. When
I
we
heard
met
that
him,
from so many people.
Yeah.
when we met him, he remembered everybody's name, and like with conversation, he kind of said, so and so. He was spot on with
As
that.
Stephanie, I remember your name, from the library said last night,
Mhm.
when he came back, Stephanie, and he
Yeah.
called her by name. She was very impressed with that as well.
I
heard
felt
that
that
last night.
his experience in the military was very similar to town government and structure. It may be worded or titled differently, but I felt that it was very similar. He seems very low-key, doesn't seem excitable. With stuff that we have going on, it's easy to become, A, caught up in things, and be excited or stressed out with different things, so I think he would handle that. My concern, being in the position that I'm in the position that we're in, I'm not necessarily sure that the town has the time right now for him to transition to municipal. I'm not saying I don't think he couldn't make that transition, he absolutely could. I'm just not sure that, with us being 6 months interim and then going into a new position, where we'll stand in 6 months from now. It still could be at a learning process, and I'm not sure if the town is set up properly right now for that. I think if he was walking in to be Heather's replacement, it would have been a little bit easier. Candace, I felt, she brought a lot to the table. She knew a lot of the operations, and like I had the opportunity to meet these candidates in their meet and greet too, so I can take stuff from that as well,
Couple
not
layers
just,
of it.
this part of what you guys saw. So I do think she brings a lot to the table. She knows policy, she knows, she's a procurement officer as well, I believe.
I thought she mentioned something like
I think
that.
she's been this one, maybe she is procurement or.
In training or taking part.
Yeah, so I do think for her, it would be walk in the door and know what needs to get done. Maybe adapt to what we have going on and our stuff, but I think she could just walk right in and hit the floor running, as Andrew as well, because they know that. I did not see, like you guys had said, that she would not be able to handle personnel. I didn't catch that
Okay.
myself. I didn't catch that she'd be good at it or bad at it.
Nothing-
I
got
missed
you, yeah.
that.
Nothing to indicate she couldn't handle them.
Yep,
But the question is certainly there because the extreme emphasis on friendships and relationships. Just her whole demeanor when she sat down, she was very, very casual when she sat down. Very comfortable, very casual. And that's okay, but I don't know.
okay.
Everything that you could say in that aspect, her and Mr. Garside were polar opposites on.
Mhm. I think for me, the con with her would be, because of where we are today and I'm doing the budget, I think my concern would be her lack of preparing a budget.
Pretty important.
Yeah,
And to be able to flop through the numbers and find things like,
and not saying that she couldn't do it,
Fuel
because she's had her
expense, yeah.
hands in the budget.
It's
So it's a plus, that she's somewhat involved, but, like I've had the experience for the past 5-6 years of working with Heather doing the budget. So I think for me to be in the position I am, to be able to be putting the budget together, working with Jean and the finance has given me the knowledge to do this. But I'm not sure how much she has. And that was my only con with her.
I got you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I just want to reiterate again how pleased I am with the 3 candidates that committee
Yeah.
brought to us. They clearly did an excellent job vetting these candidates, and they brought us 3 very well qualified, each with a master's degree in public administration, but yet very different. So we're not comparing 3 different kinds of apples. We have 3 very different candidates. And I like that. We clearly get to, as we all said, any one of these 3 could do this job. What's the best fit for our town now and into the future is our challenge. I don't think we can make a wrong choice here, which is good. That's a wonderful place to be in. But I think we can certainly make a best choice, and I know I had picked mine before our deliberations, and I could re-rank them now, but my scoring of their positions to me won't change from my thoughts coming into here. Listening to the conversation, my ranking for 1, 2, and 3 has remained unchanged.
Thank you. So how would we like to best proceed now that we've,
Have you gentlemen ranked them, or
hmm?
have you ranked them and thought of first, second, third, what you think?
Yeah, we can, if you want.
I've had a tough time with the ranking. I find that the pros and cons are so balanced with each, it just depends on which pro you want to focus on and which con you want to focus on to see if, well, I could rank this guy because I like this quality today, and tomorrow I want that quality, so I'll take that lady there, or I'll take this. So right now, it wasn't easy for me to provide a rank, so I really didn't come in, well, I did come in with a concept of a rank. But after our discussions, it kind of like I just washed a blank
That-
sheet across that,
That's
and
why I
now
wrote
I'm
my-
like,
That's why I
okay,
wrote my
there.
thoughts down before we started the discussion.
So-
I see if they change or not. But
It didn't really, it's not like it changed a lot, more than the feel changed a lot. Because, I mean, what I wrote down were things I'd already been thinking. Generally, I agreed with everything brought to the table. So it's not like, oh, I disagree with that. So much as, yeah, okay, yep, that seems to
Just-
fit in the same columns I was thinking.
different things pointed out.
It just didn't come to the top of my head. One of the things, well, there's a, this is a difficult thing because it's verging on executive session type talk as to if you think you have three candidates that are all capable, good, and in the end, you could say, I'm glad I got either one of them. What becomes the next decision-making you would do between the three?
I think you would rank them and see where.
No, you've already ranked them, and you say they're all equal. They're all 99s out of 100.
No. But they're
When it
not.
comes to qualities, resumes, experience, when you balance all the pros and cons,
You're saying what you should do next?
But-
what is your next criteria
I
you
don't
would
know.
base
I
your
think-
decision on?
To me, they're clearly not all equal when it's all said.
No, I understand
I
that.
think my recommendation would be to hold another interview then, with them.
If
In a
if
different-
that
different
was your
scenario.
feeling, you'd probably need to ask more questions or look at something different. But it's not my opinion at all. And I'd be glad to, if we wanted to talk more about the overall three candidates now, we could do that as well. And I could tell you why I've reached my ranking.
Would you also consider one of the things is what do you think they're gonna wanna get paid?
No, not yet. That's
You
not-
wouldn't consider that at all as
Nope.
you're trying to figure out the impact on this town?
No.
You mean in choosing a candidate?
I think.
If you think they're all equal based on what we've talked through right now, that they're equal enough, that, you know what? Let's just say we take the one with the least experience. We've all agreed, I believe, Andrew seems to have the least supervisory experience and may have a lot of municipal experience, don't get me wrong.
I'd go the other way. I'd say Matthew has the least experience, municipal-wise, in the functioning of an actual town government. Military, like what you pointed out, the military, when we talk about the.
Okay, I was just trying to choose
Oh, no, but
one.
I'm
I'm
saying-
sorry, we didn't agree on that. So
No,
that was a bad
but if we
example.
talk about, for example, we both agreed with and liked his opinion on, if someone has an issue, we want to find the issue, identify it, and counsel them. That's military standard. We're taught that in PLDC. We're taught that when we first become non-commissioned officers. I was taught that. That's why I have the same attitude. That's a military thing. If he didn't have that attitude and have it developed well, he wouldn't have lasted in the military. So although I admire it, I don't give him special credit for it. It's a military thing. That's how it's done. It's literally how it's done, and it's taught that way. We
It's not
have
how
very
people respond to
rigid.
Massachusetts
We
state
have
labor law.
very rigid timelines to counsel people and to correct their issues, whether it's failing a PT test, failing a weight, weigh-in or measurement, failing to, do your job to a standard, or an orientation course to a standard, condition task to a standard. And when you don't fail it, there's a process to put you back on course. It's all well-defined for you. So some of those things I don't give a lot of credit for as far as a personal attribute, because it's a shared military attribute. That's a benefit from a military person. as far as the town government experience, as we said, as Fay had said, trying to get him up to speed for how the town works is different. In the things, the reason I discounted him as my first choice were because, like my con, I think my cons define it for me. I think the pros, they all have good pros to justify them being in the job. And the cons is what I'm looking at to what would make me hesitate to put them there. And I don't like that this is sort of, well, you know, oil wasn't in good money right now, so I thought I'd give this a shot. I'd be here in 5 years if I'm still being challenged. I just don't have the confidence that he's gonna be here long-term. It is certainly hasn't been his first choice for a career, and I think both of the other two candidates over him are better for the town because of that. And that's what's put him out of the running for me for the first choice. I just, he's not familiar with the municipal government process, and he's, his commitment to this really is not proven, as the other two are. They've been doing this already, they went to college for it, they got a master's in it, they're working in the field, and they want to advance in the field. They've proven that they're dedicated to this, and I like that, because we want someone that's gonna be here for a long time. That's why, for me, he was out on the top. And when we look at the other two, the negatives, the IT is important to me, but it's not a deal breaker for her. Her demeanor and the over friendliness, just I don't know why, it struck me just the wrong way. I didn't like the feel, the fit. It just didn't. I didn't like that. And as far as the timidness, which was a real only detraction from Andrew, I can't say that he's not going to be authoritative. I saw that optimistically as being respectful to this board, to not be over assertive to this board or the people he met. He's not their boss yet. He'd like to be, or their co-worker for others, you know. I just don't, I don't think he'd be doing well in it if he was that timid, and I don't think, you know, the other things that he brings to the table are so monumental as far as the working knowledge of it, of the municipality now, of the budget, of the grants, of procurements. The fact that he said, hey, what we should look to is we gotta bring more business into town, we gotta promote this town out, things we've been talking about, getting together with that board about how to develop business. He spit that on his own. That's already the attitude and the forward thinking we're looking for already, and there's a lot of things I really like that maybe lean towards him, and that's where I still stand. As I said, I think anyone could do the job, and we wouldn't be in a bad position with any of them, but I really did feel that he stood out, and that was where I was before, and after listening to everyone's pros and cons, that's still where I remain.
Okay. Well, I just thought that Candace and Andrew were my two preferred, and I thought Candace probably had a little bit of an edge over Andrew. I can easily, if the board wants, she was my number one choice, but is my number one choice, but if the board goes the other way, I'm very comfortable as well. And that I understand too. And if we want to have just the two of them in for another interview, it's our call. And that's another possibility. And that's what we kept doing with the police, you should know, several times over. They were pretty well interviewed out, I had a feeling, when they were done.
We interviewed them into submission.
Under some, yeah, I told you something, but they were pretty good at answering questions when they finished.
Yeah.
But anyway, but she's my choice, and I think I articulated my reasons, but I'm perfectly comfortable with the other one as well, so. However, you gentlemen want.
If we talk more about her responses and the similarities I felt her responses had to the other answers, I just absolutely assumed during her interview that she'd watch the other interviews, because the answers were, I mean, from Andrew to Matthew's answers, they were very different. There were no similar phrases, no similar responses. They really, they were completely different.
Yep.
And for her responses to have striking similarities to both of their responses within one question, I just absolutely was positive that she'd watched the interviews. Now, it could be that someone else watched it and gave her the
Yeah.
points from it or
And
whatever.
they've probably seen a few
But-
meetings anyway,
But
so
there was, it seemed to me there had to be, you know, some wisdom there, for some clear foresight, which I thought was great. But when the last question came out, and she said, well, I could have no way of knowing what the other people think about this stuff, that blew me away. I did not believe it, frankly. I can't justify that other than the fact that with the responses that I took is very similar.
Mhm.
I don't know, it settled badly with me. And
Yeah.
that's really, that was strong and beyond the cons of the IT. And I think being non-authoritative,
Mhm.
more friendly than authoritative. And there's a balance here. It can be too authoritative too, which I thought Matthew would be, and he clearly didn't come across as too authoritative. He came across as approachable and nice. But my first concern was him, was he'd be too authoritative. And I think she's the other end. I think she was non-authoritative. And I was not pleased with
Yeah.
with the overall. As far as compared to
Okay.
my other two, I actually ranked her last because of those things.
Okay.
As much as I think her municipal experience fits here better, that really soured me
Yeah, okay.
in the end.
I can understand that too. So what would you gentlemen prefer to do?
See if Matt wants to try to do a ranking now.
Or just make a motion if you want.
Well, we can't have a tie, well, we could, I suppose. There's three candidates.
Well, right, I mean, if you guys are open to it, I'll just make a motion, and we'll see, if we do,
Make
we
a
do, if
motion,
we don't, we
make a
don't.
motion whenever you want to make a motion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you don't wanna give your rankings? You would just like to move forward for a motion?
He doesn't have to if he
I'm
can.
just asking.
Well,
Anyone can make a motion whenever they want.
my vote would be the same as my ranking in a way, because the one that doesn't win isn't better than the other one that doesn't win. Don't get me wrong. So, with that said, we've done our debates, we've done our things. I think the positives and negatives. I actually do, I agree with what Greg had mentioned, Charlie's reiterated. I think the search committee provided 3 excellent candidates, all 3 diverse, gave us a good, diverse group, all qualified. So I really appreciate the time and the effort and the quality of the candidates they provided. With that and all our discussions this evening and the interviews, I would make a motion to appoint, let me see if I get the last name right. I'll read this so I don't screw it up again. Andrew Golis as the new town administrator.
I would second that.
Okay. Discussion.
I think I have nothing more to add myself.
Do you have anything?
No.
Okay. What,
Excuse me, can someone from sitting here say something, or is that not the place?
That's up to Charlie.
what?
That's up to you.
Well, yeah, you can, yeah, go ahead.
Just sitting here listening, and I've made some decisions based on what you said, and I'm not here to make a decision, but I think something may be a little missing, in that we have 3 candidates, and nobody has ever said, can this candidate fulfill our opinion as to the obligations that we are putting on a town administrator? That's all.
Okay.
I guess I understand what you're saying.
I feel we covered that though with the,
Yeah,
the
two
fact that
questions.
two of them pretty much are fully involved in the role right now.
Okay. Okay, what I, just to reiterate to you two gentlemen, is that I had supported Candace. I'd like to stay with that at this point, but as soon as it's done, I would like to make a motion that I would support the decision of the board and stand fully behind that individual. I don't personally have a, you know, I think he's a qualified candidate, I said that, and I would just prefer to do it that way, but I'd cast one ballot afterwards, if that's all right.
I'm misunderstanding what you're
Yeah.
saying.
I want to make it a unanimous vote. I want to be able to vote, just say I prefer one other candidate, and just say vote no, and then afterwards, I'm going to make a motion to make it a unanimous vote for the person we hired. I want to support the board. It's a traditional, kind of a normal thing.
I got you.
to
You're
do.
just saying I'm not opposed to the person that's in the seat. It's pretty
No,
much how
I'm
you're
very
doing
much
that
in
is-
favor, and I want to.
I follow.
I just want to let everybody know that I will do my level best to make it work and make him work out well, and
Okay.
I'll be very proud to work with him.
So I'll
Okay.
need a second on Charlie's motion to.
We already have a motion on a second on a vote, though, for.
I think his discussion was to, in a way, put a motion after.
Yeah, I'll do mine after.
So he was just saying, I will make a motion after this
Okay.
vote, and this is
Okay.
what I'm thinking of doing.
Okay.
So the
I'll call
motion.
for a vote. Those in favor of Matt's motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I will be opposed. Now, I will make a motion that the board unanimously supports, I gotta make sure I got all these names right now, I keep forgetting. Unanimously supports offering, entering into negotiation with Andrew Golis from Palmer, and that I will just add a caveat that I look forward to working with him, and I'm very excited about that possibility. So that is my motion, and I'll need a second.
I second the motion to move
Okay.
into negotiations with Andrew Gullis.
Okay, and with those thoughts added, and I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do we want to come up with anything tonight to make an offer, or?
Shall we
I
go-
think we do that into
We
executive.
need to be. in
Yeah, I know that.
executive to do
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Are we pushing anyone's time, or do you want to do another night, or do you want to do it?
I would make a motion to go into executive session to discuss potential contract negotiation positions and set up a schedule to see when we could actually bring him in to start that and figure out when our labor council or similar could be available to assist us.
We can discuss that.
Fred
in
Duperre
executive.
is going to be here on Wednesday already, 1 o'clock for the DPW bargaining negotiations.
Mhm.
And he has something in Athol at 6, but he was suggesting maybe 4:30 to meet with the, your selection to do some negotiations at that point.
He's also going to be here Thursday at 10 in the morning for the police union negotiation. Could we do it that day? Because I'm taking that day off for that. It would be hard for me to cut out early Wednesday and then take the next day off.
That would
if it's
be better
possible,
for
that
me,
was available.
actually.
That could work, I guess. I'm not sure what Fred's schedule is.
Right. So if it's possible, that'd be great if you could check that.
Okay, so you would want to have the candidate there, I would presume.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
So I second the motion to move to executive session.
Before we just do we want to invite him to town meeting to introduce him? Well, where we haven't come to an agreement, it might not
No.
be,
No, not unless we know.
Could be a little
I recommend you
risky.
wait until.
Yeah, I think that's a good
he's
idea.
comfortable with
Yeah.
with the
Okay.
package and then gives notice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, he may not, his town may not know that he's applying.
They do now.
Probably, but maybe not, you never
I think
know.
they do.
Okay, so-
I am
I
so
don't think
excited.
Palmer's watching our selectmen
We just
meetings.
need-
Probably not, but they know.
We gotta have a vote for executive.
Yes, and we would be in executive session for probably no more than an hour and
Thank
come
you,
out
guys.
to adjourn.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
I'm glad I had the opportunity of sitting,
I appreciate you coming.
paying attention.
Thanks, Sam.
I'm just gonna.
Thanks again, Sam, for getting the door.
Hold on one second.
Yep. Verify that.
I'm gonna just make a phone